Shrek decided he didn't want a haircut. And in fact, he didn't want a haircut ever again. And so while his fellow sheep were marching down to get their wool cut, Shrek secretly walked to the back of the pen, snuck out the back gate, and ran away up over the hillside without anybody noticing. He just kept on running until he found this cave high up on this mountainside that he could hide inside of. At first, the farmer didn't even realize Shrek was missing. But eventually, he did catch on, and he went out looking for Shrek, but he couldn't find him. And so eventually he had to just accept that Shrek was gone. 6 years later, in 2004, this farmer was out walking around the hillside a couple miles away from his farm when something moved in the corner of his eye. And so he turned and looked uphill, and there, perched on a rock, standing proudly, was the most absurd looking sheep he had ever seen. It was Shrek, and he looked like an enormous brown cotton ball. Wild sheep will shed their wool every year, but domestic sheep, like Shrek, just continue to grow wool until it's sheared off. But during Shrek's 6 years he spent living in this cave, he never got a haircut, and so his fleece just continued to grow, and by the time it was finally sheared off, it weighed 60 pounds. His fleece contained enough wool to make suits for 20 large men. Shrek shot to fame immediately. He was sheared live on New Zealand's national television, and his fleece was auctioned off to help raise money for a children's hospital. Shrek met the Prime Minister of New Zealand, and he became the subject of many children's books and made dozens of charity appearances. 2.5 years after his first live television event, Shrek was sheared again on live TV, this time off the coast of New Zealand on an iceberg, again to raise money for charity. Shrek would spend the next couple of years touring the country before settling down back at his farm, where he eventually died of old age in 2011. To this day, he is still considered a national treasure. Leandro got up and went downstairs in his house, and he began looking for his beloved family pet, a tiny young red-footed tortoise named Manuela. The first place he looked was the back room of the first floor, where Manuela spent most of her time, but she wasn't in there. So he decided to search the rest of the first floor, but after looking around, he still couldn't find her. So he ran into his kitchen where his family was getting ready for the day, and he enlisted their help to go looking for her. Within an hour, they had turned the entire house upside down and had made their way out into their backyard, but there was still no sign of the little tortoise. Their father called them over and told them that unfortunately, Manuela was gone. Most likely, she slipped out of one of the doors that had been left open and had found her way into the nearby forest that butted up against their property. Leandro and his siblings begged their father to go looking for Manuela in the forest, but he told them that because she was so small, it would be nearly impossible to find her. Leandro was crushed, and he just prayed that someday that little tortoise would come back to him. 30 years later, in 2013, Leandro and his siblings were now grown adults and had moved out, but in January of that year, their father passed away, and so the kids decided to go back to the family home and clear out some of his old possessions. The father was a bit of a hoarder and was always on the lookout for old TVs and microwaves and furniture. He would bring them to his house and stuff them into his upstairs storage closet, and over time, as he collected more and more junk, that closet became so packed that Leandro's father couldn't even go inside of it. Now that he was gone, the kids knew they would have to go in there and get rid of all that junk. At one point, Leandro picked up a big heavy box that looked like an old record player, and so he brought it outside, he set it on his curb, and then he turned around to walk back towards the house when his neighbor, who had been outside the whole time, jokingly yelled to him, "Hey, are you gonna throw away this tortoise too?" And Leandro turned around, and there, poking its head out of the old record box, was Manuela the tortoise, happy and healthy as can be. 30 years earlier, Manuela had managed to climb inside of this old record box when their father had brought it home, and then the father brought that box upstairs and put it inside of his storage closet along with Manuela. Once she was inside this closet, Manuela just carved out a life for herself. She transformed the record box into her home, and she would leave it to eat termites and other insects and lick condensation off the walls. Red-footed tortoises are known for being extremely resilient. When food is scarce, they can go 2 to 3 years between meals. And if after that there's still no food, they can lower their body temperatures and other physiological processes and enter into this state of suspended animation that allows them to go even longer without sustenance. Because of this, it's no wonder that tortoises like Manuela live for at least 50 years on average. Leandro rushed over to Manuela, he scooped her up, he had missed her so much he could not believe he was looking at her again. And while Manuela had been doing just fine inside of her closet, she was no doubt very pleased to be reunited with her family. Just know that I really appreciate your support, and until next time that's going to do it, see ya.